Verse 444. Eternity and non-eternity, oneness too, bothness and not-bothness as well. These are discriminated by the ignorant who are confused in mind and bound up by errors since beginningless time. Ignorance here is the assumption that there's an external world. And this is what's being explored in these verses. It's what's being challenged. This assumption, this belief, is a strong habit that we have. And you might wonder, well, what's the big deal here? What's the big deal? Well, the point is, our mind is constantly looking for something in what the previous verse described as a mirage. The mind, because of its belief in the reality of the mirage, is constantly looking for satisfaction. This is what's meant by ignorance. And it's something, even if you've seen through the mirage, it's something that we can't help but lapse into rather a lot. So the Lankavatara Sutra is attempting to redress the balance. It describes this ignorance, this belief that there's an external world from which we can gain satisfaction. It describes it as being confused in mind, confused in the mind, mental confusion, and bound up by errors since beginningless time. We believe this has been so and always been so. It's how we've operated since we were first taught to speak, or since we first learnt to speak. We learn words. These words relate to things out there. So let's have a look at some of the discriminations that we make because of this ignorance. And the first pair are eternity and non-eternity. Now I suspect this verse actually pertains to some Buddhist debates, perhaps from centuries ago. This verse is possibly attacking specific viewpoints that were current. And if you're an academic, you can go and research this and keep yourself busy. But these videos aren't an academic exercise. They have to pertain to our immediate situation and point us to something else, some greater truth. And if they don't, we can discard them. If you want academic debate, go elsewhere. But this is not the place for them. We need to find the immediate relevance of these verses. And in doing so, I appreciate I might be given a non-standard interpretation. But that doesn't matter. We have to direct ourselves by whatever means to our present confusion and look beyond it. So eternity and non-eternity. I've spoken about this before actually, on many occasions, but let's speak about it again freshly. These are rather grandiose concepts, metaphysical concepts. In what way do they relate to our immediate experience? I'm not even interested in beliefs. I'm interested in poking at a assumptions that we're unconscious of. The major assumption being that there's an external world and there's an individual here moving around in it, moving around in the external world. So eternity and non-eternity, well, this represents both these poles. We believe that this external world has been going on for a long time. If you believe in the modern scientific point of view, you might quibble with the term eternity, because you say, no, it's only been going on for about 13 billion years. But that's only according to one particular scientific theory. There are others which postulate things before the Big Bang. And if you're a Hindu or a Buddhist, and you don't believe that that's the beginning anyway, it's just the beginning of this world cycle. The universe comes into being, it goes out of being, then it comes into being again and goes out of being, and so on. So this is eternity. So we believe that this external world has been going on for a long time, much longer than me, who's non-eternal. Although if you believe that there's a part of you which has been recycled since beginningless time, then I suppose there's an eternal aspect there. Although you wonder where the extra jivas or souls are coming from, because the population has definitely increased. I suppose they've been hanging around in other levels of existence. But the point is that our immediate experience is not one of eternity. It's one of mortality, of limitation, of non-eternity. There's the idea that there's still this limited individual here walking around this stage set which has been going on for a very long time. So this is non-eternity and that is eternity. Oneness too, bothness and not-bothness. Well, oneness is focusing on one thing, focusing on an object, the video camera, or a person, a computer, a bed. That is an object, an individual object. This is the process of discrimination. We're in the dream landscape. It's just a dream, but within that landscape we focus on a particular object or individual. And we focus on that object in contrast to another object. And this is bothness. Because you can only have oneness if you've got some idea of otherness. And that otherness, together with the oneness, clarifies the oneness. So they both contribute to this. So this is bothness. And we can establish the identity of two things in contrast to everything else which is not them. So this oneness, bothness and not-bothness, I mean, we could understand it in terms of duality and non-duality, but I think this is just the very process of discrimination by which we differentiate one part of the field of experiencing from another part. And then we distinguish both these parts from the whole field of experiencing. So let's be quite sure we're relating to this. Here's a mouse. It's one thing. It's an individual thing. It's an entity, an object. It's an object. And here's another object. They're both, it's a sheaf of paper. So they're both objects. This is bothness. And we distinguish them from everything else. Everything which is not this bothness apply it to anything that's happening right now. You're listening to this video, you're watching it perhaps. This is oneness. You have a choice of looking at some of these intriguing related videos down the side. Either you can choose either to continue listening to this one or click on one of these other rather more interesting looking ones. So that's bothness. You've got two things to choose from. But you're watching a video, this is your choice. This one or this one. And that's against everything else that's going on, which we're excluding for the sake of watching a video, either this one or another one. So this is bothness and not bothness. It's the process of discrimination, which is fueled by the automatic assumption that there are individual entities and objects going on, based on the assumption, the automatic assumption, that there's actually what the previous verse described as a world of multitudes. So we try and come back to the sense that it's all a dream. All of this is of the one nature. What the previous verse described as like an hallucination or a mirage. It's a projection of consciousness. Let's come back to consciousness. And the reality of consciousness is the reality of awareness. And it's the reality of the awareness that is hearing this. Let's come back to it and abide in its stillness, even if only for a few moments. This is our enlightenment practice.